Hello, everyone. Welcome to our lounge alley. This is Drawing Comics, part 35. I am your host, and I'm going to be drawing John Buscema's Conan the Barbarian. And this is what it looks like so far. I'm going to show you guys some old, I want to say, because I finished the sketchbook finally. So I'm going to show you guys some old panels that I worked on in this sketchbook. Most current one. Starting with, I believe that's the very first one. I'm going to say yes, right. So this is it right here. Took some time to also do some watercolor for these. And surprisingly, they turned out all right. I'm not going to say the best. But I'm basically showing you guys this so you could see, really, you could do it on any size sketchbook. This is pretty small. Again, it's like pretty close to the size of my hand, I want to say. And I just drew out each panel as much as I could fit onto the page and focused on trying to get it down as close to the original as possible. Also practicing watercolor on all of them. As you guys could see, further and further I go, it starts to transition into... This turned out pretty good. I'm surprised actually, because I put so much water on this one, try to get that yellow. It still managed to retain itself and not like rip or anything. Yeah, as I went further and further in, started to transition into doing like colored pencils. These are still watercolor. Still use watercolor for these. And then eventually, transitioned to India ink, and these are the color pencil ones. Starting with this panel, this is still watercolor, these are color pencil, and then here I started doing India inks, and this is India ink as well. This was pretty challenging actually, getting down this color. But yeah, I'm going to continue coloring all this stuff as well. I just wanted to show you guys the process so far. There's still several panels to do on here before I completely abandon the sketchbook as history. Here are some more panels still in the rough draft. But today I'm going to continue on with this panel right here in this, not new, this isn't a new sketchbook, this is actually an old sketchbook. It's a sketchbook that I wasn't happy with. You know, I was flipping through my old work and I was like, why did I leave so many empty pages? And I think even in this, at the end, the very end, I left like several very good quality paper blank. There isn't really anything on here, so it's a shame, and I'm going to totally take advantage of it to fill it up all the way, both sides, as much as possible. But I'm going to continue on with this page right here. So those of you who aren't familiar, this is John Buscema's work right here. This is the official comics adaptation of the hit film Conan the Barbarian, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you guys haven't seen it, I encourage you guys to check it out. It's pretty fun. It's of its time. It's well done. You know, there isn't a lot of CGI there. In fact, there is no CGI. A lot of it is done either in studio or actually traveling to the locations. to create background scenes and etc. Very hands-on approach when it comes to creating the scenes as opposed to it being digital. So it's fun travel back in time to how movies were made. But he has some amazing panels here, very expressive. Especially this panel. This is like one of my favorite panels, or pages rather, starting from here all the way out. How he tells the story, how his figure drawing really pops out here, his ability to tell emotion using body language, face expression, here as well, and just really cool looking faces. I like the design of the helmet. I like the perspective as well. Beautiful line work, absolutely beautiful line work. And I use this as an example of how well he tells a story by zooming out and having this like distant shot showing this dead tree that he's crucified on. It's like playing into the idea of him waiting to die, basically. There's nothing around. It's desert, basically. It's scorching heat. There are vultures circling around him, waiting to get some food. And him just waiting for that moment until, starting from this shot, I want to say, he starts to recognize something at a distance, and almost a disbelief, like, really, in the middle of nowhere, there's somebody who's coming my way. And then, as you could see, like from the bird's eye view, to just kind of bring on that anxiety in a way, like death is looming, to this shot, seeing the figure gradually getting bigger and bigger, to revealing it being actually a friend coming to his rescue. And just, I love, this is something I mention very frequently, I love the combination of his work of like comic book feel, yet pretty sophisticated lines and figures and expression and all that stuff, like looking at the hand, of course it has a comic book feel to it, but at the same time it has this realism, right? It's not highly detailed, but just enough detail to suggest that it's very well done, and it is rendered in a way that makes you feel like it's an actual real hand. It's not cartoonish. Not that I'm saying that's wrong. It's just something that I personally enjoy. And then here as well, as you could see, his anatomy is also very much close to realism than the opposite. But at the same time, because I believe the color as well and his line work, it really balances this beauty between like realism and comic book feels. I think also a lot of it has to do with the coloring. I think that's a major component, because I have seen his work done in more three-dimensional coloring style, and it sort of takes that away. It sort of takes away the comic book feel. For me personally, could be I'm biased because I really do enjoy all this work from its time. Or it's just like my personal aesthetic, I really like this combination of like flat colors but realistic figure poses and drawings. But yeah, this is where I'm going to be continuing to work from. I'm going to continue to flesh out this panel down here. So something I was going to talk about, in a previous stream I mentioned, why draw from comics. And I like to reiterate once in a while to remind, or for newcomers, to get excited about possibly doing the same thing. I think with comics, or drawing from comics, copying them, there's so many benefits if you're learning to draw. For one being, you actually have something to practice from. A lot of times, and I could think back to when I was younger, I didn't practice because I didn't know what to draw at that moment. I was like, what do I draw? And that was half the battle. That was like me having to go through my days, and then eventually something would pop up into my memory, or something would pop up into my imagination. I'm like, oh, that's great. I really want to sit down and bring this idea to life. I really want to sit down and create this. And then I would sit and actually do it and get it out. And then again, the battle would start again of like, what do I draw? What sort of pose? What sort of idea? Where do I start from? Like all these questions start to pour in, and at times it was unmotivating. Times where I was just trying to practice. I didn't know where to go with it. I didn't know what to actually do to do it. So picking a comic book and dedicating yourself to it and saying like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to draw every single part of this drawing. I'm going to dedicate to being as accurate as possible. Not to copy this person and be like them, but to practice from, to understand their work, to understand what the process is like. What do you start with? Do you first start out with drawing the panel out, and then filling it in? Do you start out with the figure and then you draw the panel? This is something that you figure out as you create it. Like, should I measure out all the panels on the page to make sure they all fit on the page? That's something that you have to consider, whether you're doing it on regular paper like this or actual comic book paper. You really have to first think about, well, how am I going to tell the story from panel to panel? It's going to kind of push you to start questioning these things and kind of get your feet wet. You want to make sure you really know what you're getting into before you get that big project, before you get that opportunity to actually, like, if you're out there and you're looking for like an entry position into doing it or whatever, at least, you have some sort of experience knowing what that's like. So that's a great opportunity, right? Like, you're able to get your feet wet and do something prior to having your nerves shook by, like, well, I don't know, like, I got this project, but what do I do? Where do I start? Am I going to be able to do this? All these questions are going to start pouring in. Whereas if you sit down, you actually practice all this stuff, you're going to be like, well, I have done it. I drew an entire comic book from page to page, cover to cover. So this shouldn't be as intimidating to do. So yet another benefit from it. You get an opportunity to study the figure. You're studying all these poses, how to draw them. You're training your hand-eye coordination because you want to make sure that you draw them out exactly as you see them. So you got to do whatever it takes to do that. And that pushes you to really focus, right? You have to really figure out whatever it is, however you need to get it down, to make sure that it all looks correct. So it really pushes you to level up and start strategizing your approach to drawing. Start focusing more and noticing more detail. You're studying also face expressions, right? As you're drawing all this stuff, as you're trying to nail down the panel and the figure or the building or whatever it is that's in the panel, you're also learning things like, well, composition, right? You're learning the composition, how to put everything together to tell a story in a way that's compelling, that's interesting. And there's some terrible composition out there that just kind of looks empty, or there isn't really much going on, where people spend way too much time on character development and not enough on understanding backgrounds. So that's another thing as well. Not only are you learning how to do composition, how to draw the figure, how to draw face expressions, you're also learning backgrounds, how to draw a car, or how to draw a building, how to draw a bunch of things around the building. You don't want it to be this like empty, boring shot of a building and nothing else around it. Drawing people around, background people. So the list is huge. As I'm going through all this, it's a lot of things that you get to do without having the burden of coming up with it yourself just yet. This is your learning stage. This is your ability to really get all this stuff down. And then next time you sit down and draw something from your imagination, you could pull from that. You could be like, oh, I remember how I drew these like crates. It was in this shot. I remember in this comic book. I remember how to draw a car because I had to draw it in this comic book, or etc. Like the list is huge. So you get to pull from all that. It builds your visual library. I don't think I don't encourage to draw exactly like them and then claim it to be yours. For one, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're taking yourself away from an opportunity to develop your own voice and develop your own style, and that's extremely rewarding. And that comes from practicing, from taking risks in your drawings, from drawing a lot, really. But yeah, it's an excellent opportunity. So if those of you who are asking why draw a comic book, why copy it from page to page, panel to panel, this is your answer right here. So those of you who are learning, who want to pick up the skill, who want to get better at drawing, I encourage you guys to do it. Doesn't have to be John Buscema, it could be anybody. And have that as you go to, as you practice every day. And that alone is going to skyrocket your drawing skills. Just having to draw every day, 2 hours, even if it's a half hour, it's better than nothing. If you draw a half hour every day, you'll eventually want to draw more. If you're going to just set yourself this expectation, be like, every day I'm going to just draw for a half an hour, even if I don't feel like that's a lot. I'm just going to do it. And then eventually you're going to realize like, oh, it's been an hour. It's been 2 hours that I've been sitting and drawing. And you won't want to stop. And it just starts with this one step forward, just one point of determination to say half hour every day. And at this point for me, I hate going a day without drawing. I absolutely hate it. It kind of ruins my day if I don't sit down and draw in a day. That's how much I enjoy it. That's how much it's a pleasure to do it. And something I talk about also frequently is like motivation, right? Like, how do you get yourself past procrastination, past, every day being a battle of like, well, I don't really want to sit down and do it, or I'm intimidated. Really, that's what most of the time procrastination says. It's like, oh, I'm intimidated by something, whether feeling disappointed from the work that you're going to put in, whether wondering if it's time well spent, whatever else, like all those things start to pour in. and then you just say, oh, I don't feel like doing it. But you got to push past that. And that motivation that I was going to talk about, really, it's not even that. Like, there is no dialogue that's going to get you to sit down and do it. I found the best approach is something that I've streamed about before. Just do it. Just do it. Don't even think about it. Like, there's certain things that you wake up and you do because you have to, right? You brush your teeth. You don't sit there and you're like, well, should I, how do I feel about it? You don't even have internal dialogue about it. You just do it. So you have to take that same approach with drawing as well. And at the end, you feel good about it. You're like, all right, I got this done. It was important. I had to do it. I had to make sure that it was something that I checked off every day. And I did do it. And in case of drawing, you could be like, I learned today. I've gotten another page done. But assigning yourself projects is the best way to do it, because you always have something to work towards. You have a page to work on today. Like today, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to finish this page from this comic book that I picked. And before you know it, you have an entire comic book that you've done. But yeah, most importantly, I'm going to say is just doing it. Like, don't rationalize with yourself. Don't think about any of that stuff. Just sit and do it. I can't tell you how many times that really worked for me. Where I didn't even feel inspired. I would be like, kind of wanted to sit and do this instead. But I wouldn't even give myself time to think about that. And I would just sit down and start drawing. And then the moment I start drawing, 10 minutes in, I'm like, I should have been doing this hours ago. So that's really the best advice I can give you guys. Don't rationalize with yourself about it. Don't give it any second thought. Just do it. The only time I agree with Nike, because other times they're using children for their labor. Is that a thing? Do they still do that, or are they just doing it under the table?
Traces of your wall hunt me down inside.
Gonna skip this song. Hold on. I just don't trust Pretzel and lyrics. You know, if this is like Apple Music, I'd be like, all right, you're gonna get some more professional workout. I don't know, maybe that's not like the best outlook, but when it comes to streaming, I'm like a little hesitant when it comes to lyrics. And this specific channel tends to sometimes play some weird I don't know, rainy music. Or like melodramatic music, I don't know. So I'm trying to kind of avoid that for the stream and just get more chill beats going. More, I wish there was like some funk that they played more often. So some of you might ask, like, well, if I'm drawing from a comic book, then, you know, how do I have time to develop my own style? And to that I say, it lends itself to it, you know, because as you draw hands, for example, and one day you might make a little mistake while drawing, and you're like, oh, I really like that actually. Now this looks kind of cool. Within that mistake, you notice something that appeals to you. And you might want to take that and run with it, you know, see what else you could do with it or how else you could bring it out in other scenes or whatever. So just by drawing, you give yourself opportunity to notice certain things that otherwise you wouldn't. You know, if you weren't drawing, you just wouldn't one day wake up and be like, oh, I got this idea for a style. You know, and of course, if you're doing work from imagination, like let's say you sit down, you do some work on the comic book that you really enjoy, and then you get an idea that comes into your mind. You sit down, you work on that idea. Even better, you know, you're now practicing from your imagination. Maybe you're using references for that work from imagination, and through all that process, you eventually find something that really resonates with you. But I would say don't rush to get there. Don't get impatient that you're not there. Really focus on getting a good understanding of all these things, like, as I mentioned, like anatomy and proportion, angles and perspective, and, you know, drawing and focusing more on that rather than being like, when am I going to find my style? Because again, it's just naturally, it's going to grow. It's going to grow in that direction. And the only thing you're going to do is just going to frustrate yourself, as opposed to taking that focus and directing it towards understanding all these things that, whether you have a style or not, you need to know. I think there are two things that are really challenging when it comes to drawing, or really about anything else, anything that you are trying to learn or gain a skill in. And those two things are motivation, pushing yourself to draw all the time, getting yourself past your I want to say capriciousness. Like, we all have that. It's like that I don't wanna, that I don't wanna attitude. That's something that is incredibly responsible for our procrastination, right? It's just like this, the brat in us that's just like, no, I don't want to do it. I want to do it. I want to go and do this instead. I don't want to do something that's going to really challenge me. I want to go and do something that's really easy. So just getting past that, and timing, scheduling, it's making sure that you do not just things for the skill that you're trying to learn, but other things as well. Like, you don't want to not eat properly, and just work all the time on it, or not exercise at all and not do any of that stuff. Just making sure that you schedule your day in a way where you can get all that stuff done. That is one of the biggest challenges out there. Just understanding the limitation of time. And I think the sooner you recognize that, and how important time is, and how limited it is throughout the day, and how much you could actually get done in a day if you schedule things right, you will really excel in anything that you're doing. Time management is absolutely essential. It's not just for those of you who are in college or in high school. It's not just for academic reasons or because somebody tells you to that you have to do things on it. It's for everything that you have to deal with throughout your day in order to get things done, in order to accomplish things, in order to level up. You need to strategize your time properly. I think for me, one of the worst feelings is procrastinating, and then at the end of the day realizing, man, so much time has gone by and I could have done this, this, and this. You could have accomplished this today. That's, I don't know about you guys, but share your experiences. Talk about what your day-to-day dialogue with yourself is like. What is it, and how can you relate to all this stuff? And I think that helps other people. I sometimes mention it in chat. Talk about it. What is your biggest obstacle? Do you ever find yourself actually having that conversation with yourself? I could have done something today with this and this, and I shouldn't have done this. I should have instead. And usually that creeps up towards the end of the day, right? When that you have to start winding down, you got to go to bed soon, and you kind of reflect on what happened today, and then you realize not much. That's terrible. I think that's one of the worst feelings. I personally don't like that feeling at all. All right, moving on to this panel where the wizard frantically runs away. I want to see if we could actually fit this in. going to say it's like a third of the panel. Now, if I do it diagonally, well, really, why not? Right, what says don't? This isn't an official page of any sort. So I'm going to take advantage of it. I'm going to say, what's the height like for this panel? Is it the same as the previous one that I was working on, the one above it? I'm going to do a quick measurement. So I'm going to do a quick measurement here. Yeah, it's about the same. So I'm going to just do that. Still some clay on this ruler. I was using it for fixing certain features. Thought it was like grime of some sort. Alright, so starting out with this one, I am gonna start out with this box up here. And that's something also that's important too, like when I was talking about like what do you gain from drawing comics? Well, here's another thing. You get to understand the importance of leaving space for dialogue. Sometimes I've gotten myself caught on certain projects where I get so carried away with like filling up the panel and really creating the scene that I don't remember that, hey, you got to put speech bubbles here. So that's another thing to think about, aside from composition of the panel, aside from the panels themselves, what kind of panels you want to use to tell the story. Are you going to do like exact same size? Are you going to vary, you know, on this page? Are you going to vary them? And the other thing you got to think about is speech bubbles. Now, I like to do that for the panels when I'm copying it because I use what I call measuring the distance between objects. So for this example, since I am using a reference here, and this is something that could be used in other cases as well, not just for references. I mean, you're drawing from imagination as well. But here, for example, I'm studying the distance between the moon and the wizard. You know, how far away is his robe from the moon in this image? And that allows me to make sure that everything fits within the panel exactly as it is here. You know, I'm not going to end up pushing everything over to this side because I scrunched the entire drawing, or I have it way too close to this end and there's like a big gap compositionally between the figures. Because remember, a lot of these panels, composition is taken into account as well. You know, if he drew this figure smaller, for example, and he drew him smaller, there would be this sense of emptiness, right? This like gap that needs to be filled in a way. So it's important for me to study the relationship between objects and make sure to draw them accurately for the sake of maintaining composition, not to break that design. And to also practice accuracy, practice noticing details. arms flailing. He is out of there. Still not sure. I have to reread this comic because I'm still not sure what happened there. Like, on one hand, it looked like he was doing something to bring him back to life. And then the next moment, you guys will see in the next panel to come, his friend, Conan's friend, the woman, goes into like some raging fit or something, despite the wizard actually having to do something with Conan coming back to life. And then he's just like running away. It's a really confusing one. I have to reread it because I'm still kind of lost here on what just happened. It's kind of one of those scenes. Alright, I'm not going to spend too much time on him. Now I'm going to move on to her. And I spotted a little mistake here. If you guys take a look here. I don't know, it's always a treat for me for some reason to spot like some sort of error. It means that they're human. I don't know. That was just liking that I have attention to detail. But if you look at the hairline right there, right? Like there's that thin strand. There's a color difference. So the entire sky is supposed to be purplish. Whereas in that gap between her hair and that hairline, it's blue. Whoops. They overlooked that part. That's kind of like reading a book and noticing that they put and twice next to each other. It's just like a typo. Alright, speech bubble. Again, I'm going to make sure I don't push everything to the wrong side. Speech bubble, and it's her head. And I'm also measuring the distance between her head and the moon. And her head and this top box. Speech box. That's what I was talking about, is rain music. Like, way too chill. Come on, Pretzel. Get it together. This might not be better. But I'm going to say it's slightly less melodramatic as the previous one. Alright, I'm gonna do some quick marks. You know, again, this is like placeholders to like sketch things out. Because there's like Conan's body to go, and that's gonna take some space. around its foot here. And I'm studying the relationship between the panel and his foot. Like how far away is one from the other. This is why it was important to draw the things out first as placeholders, because now I could shift things around. I could be like, okay, that was too big. It needs to be a little smaller. And now I could slowly shift that. Challenging angle, challenging pose, because I am noticing that things are shifted downwards too much. Like his hand should not be touching this frame, but it could be that my frame is just not long enough for this. I don't know. That's an excuse. This is a lot smaller of a panel than this. I should have been able to fit into it. So I'm really just trying to get as much of this down before I have to end the stream, y'all. As I mentioned, I would love to do drawing comics more often. I just can't do it now. I just, time-wise, I can't afford it. I got these other projects that really need to take up most of the time. Whereas before I used to do it 5 days a week. Now it's just limited to once a week. But I think at some point in the future, I'm going to come back to doing this hopefully full time again, where it's 5 days a week, where I stream for 4 hours. I just don't see that anytime soon yet. But it is a goal, which I mentioned. It's excellent to have. Highly encourage you guys to have drawing goals. Keeps you motivated, keeps you thinking, how can I get to that goal? What can I do to get to that goal? Keeps your mind flowing. And there's a lot going on here. And I'm really trying to stay as true to the original as possible. Like every line, I'm trying to make sure it is just like the original one. Not going to say I'm failing miserably, but I most certainly see areas where I could do much better. I mean, technically, I'm still in the sketch phase, you know, and I am trying to like keep it light. For this purpose. Like once I do start noticing, oh, this is shifted, this isn't right, and I still have time to fix it. It's not doomed. Well, y'all, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to bring it to a close for tonight. It was a blast as always. I might work on this more, you know, because I do want to finish more panels I want to finish off this page completely. And it is fun. I really like this panel, despite it not really being really focused on the face or showing much of the figure. I'm just going to bring it into focus for a minute. Right before I end the stream, I just want to talk about it a little bit, but I think compositionally it's beautiful. There's a lot of going on, a lot of action going on simply from the I guess, blanket that's on top of him. The way that it's drawn compositionally, how the shadows are dispersed throughout it. There's like this unifying kind of element to it. There aren't areas, aside from like the center, there aren't areas that are stark. It really brings everything towards the middle, kind of like all of these shadows have that. And it's a very expressive shape. It suggests drama, it suggests action, which I think is very cool. And of course, looking at the face, the even though it's not super close and you're not zoomed in, there's still the line work suggests shock, right? And also his line work there is very accurate still. As you can see, the eyes line up, they're proportionate to one another. It's not one is bigger than the other. He didn't take any shortcuts, is what I'm getting at, basically. Even in this shot, even though you can't really zoom in much, it still suggests that the gesture of her hand also suggests shock, and it's also very expressive. There's character to it. There's a pretty interesting shapes there as well, and his face expression suggests the same thing. You could look at his face and you could see some sort of agony and almost like a sigh of breath, or like him breathing in deeply, waking up from death, basically. And his hand also suggesting that as well. That there's movement there and some sort of drama going on, which I really like. And of course, the guy flailing in the background is also very cool. His robe, I guess, just flailing in the wind, and the shadows as well on it really fill up this entire panel in a way. Because imagine if that wasn't there, like the shadows on that, it would feel kind of flat. But with his brilliant shadow work, it really brings the image together as well. And compositionally, if you look at it here, you got shadows underneath, and how that kind of comes around to here, having the shadows here, and then comes back to her as the focus as well. I think is excellent work by John Buscema, as always. Well, that about wraps it up, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. I will be back next Monday for more drawing comics at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But for tomorrow, it'll be the same schedule. In the beginning, it will be 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be doing figure drawing basics. I'll be continuing on with that. And then I will be continuing with my personal project, which I am getting closer and closer to the next stages. It's coming along pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. And you guys will get to see what's up tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here at the Art Lounge Alley. So thanks again, y'all, for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow.